All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Doesn't seem like we've got any guests just yet. Is that correct, Holly?
Yes, I don't see anybody here.
Perfect. All right. The first thing on the agenda is a staff report. Do you want to do that or financials first, since it's a quick?
I'll knock the staff report out first. I think just a few things to report. So technically, the Waldron is up and running and ready to host performing artists and art on the walls. Woohoo! However, Omicron is just making it to where we are not comfortable really hosting anything at this point as far as a reopening celebration or an exhibition in the visual arts galleries. We did potentially have a couple of users who were scheduled to use the Performing Arts Auditorium on the third floor of the building in January and early February, but given the status of Omicron, both of those groups chose not to use the venue. So the earliest in the performance group will most likely be using the venue is middle of February, when Cardinal Stage will be loading in for a March show. I think just given the stance the mayor is taking on this, given the fact that City Hall continues to be closed and City Hall staff are being encouraged to primarily work from home, I am very much operating as doors are closed at this point, unless we have a specific request to use the space, and then I am happy to go in and host. But overall, not looking to schedule anything until the beginning of March at this point. I am in conversation with colleagues at the City Hall and the mayor's office to try to do some sort of reopening celebration on March 4th, which again is first Friday of March. And I think the earliest we would be comfortable doing something in a space like that where people would be gathering, but that is still very much in process. And I will hopefully be sending out more information about that in the coming weeks. Once we've solidified a date for that, I will make sure it's on all of your calendars. But again, right now, we're just kind of laying low, waiting to see what the next few weeks look like as far as Omicron numbers. Any questions before I move on from that?
Has any progress been made in actually kind of committing to the management company, third party?
So we are in the final stages of negotiations with the company that's proposing to take over management of the Waldron beginning in July 2022. We're not there yet, but I feel like the city and the group are very much wanting to push this through as soon as possible. We have a meeting next Wednesday to discuss actual terms of the contract. I think after that meeting, we're going to be pretty close to getting some ink on paper as far as an actual signed contract for their management. But again, I don't want to commit 100% to anything until we've had this conversation. But I'm really happy with where the conversations are now. I think most of our major issues in the negotiation have been resolved, and now it's just kind of finalizing some last language, just cleaning some stuff up, making sure we're all on the same page as far as who's responsible for what. And the two things, and really what the management of the visual arts gallery will look like. As soon as that's solidified, I will give you more details.
Yeah, no worries. It was just, I wanted to get a sense of how close or far away from ink on paper we're and
again, I think we're just at this point where everybody just wants this to be a done deal. So we are just trying to make sure everybody is happy with what that deal looks like ultimately.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. The other major thing I'm going to share is just actually related to the Waldron Center. So when the original Waldron Task Force completed its recommendation report for next steps of what was going to happen to the Waldron, part of that recommendation was, okay, we're going to use the Waldron for at least the next 5 years. And it's just kind of going to be, a Band-Aid while we figure out big picture, what is the best performing arts venue for the city? And they recommended that a new feasibility study be done to determine whether or not we continue to use the Waldron as the primary arts center in Bloomington, whether or not we build a new center that would either complement the Waldron or take the Waldron's place as a physical hub where arts activities would be happening, and whether or not, in addition to whatever physical space we end up with, what other programs and resources can we lock in to really invigorate the arts overall in different neighborhoods, and say to neighborhood residents, hey, you don't necessarily have to come to this one space downtown to see art. Here are all these resources for you to see and do work in your own areas of town. So we are going to be starting with a company called Traegen Architects in the coming months to put together that study. So they're going to be doing a few site visits, both to evaluate the art spaces that exist in the city right now. They're also going to be doing a series of focus groups with art stakeholders in the community to find out what artists' needs are, so the recommendations they make will meet those needs. I really would love to have the BAC at the table for that workshop. My thinking now is that we should just have a meeting, just the BAC, no other representatives with them. And then we'll be doing some other meetings with other kind of like larger groups that will include representatives from different arts organizations in town, with the understanding they can't meet with all the arts organizations because there are just too many, which is a good thing. So right now they're wary about scheduling these workshops again because of Omicron numbers, but we're looking to hopefully start scheduling those in February. So as details come together for that, I'll be reaching out to all of you to try to arrange that workshop. And I think too, I will just keep you all updated as the feasibility study progresses. I think it will take the course of 2022 to figure it out. So I'll just be sharing updates with you all and probably looking for feedback from you all at different stages of this project as it progresses. But I'm really excited to undertake this work and kind of use the information we glean from this study to just inform other longer term projects the city is undertaking for the arts in the coming years. So any questions about that?
No, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And then the other thing I just want to report on, so January is the month that council tends to appoint new commissioners to all the different commissions in the city. So we have 4 vacant council seats right now, and we have several amazing applicants out there waiting to get those council interviews and fill those seats. So I'm hoping that I will have some good news to report very soon about new council appointments. And I will be teaming up with other colleagues in economic and sustainable development who also have empty seats, just to make sure we are putting the pressure on council to get our commissions full. I think it's very important, especially as we're starting this new level of work with the feasibility study and looking towards a few very large public arts projects and having a lot of money to spend on grants this year. And so that's all the staff report updates I have. I can use the grants thing as a seg into our financial report, if that makes sense, Bryony.
Yeah, go ahead into the financial report.
Great. Okay, so first of all, I have to apologize. The finance report I sent you is not accurate. So I am sorry about that. So we are down our financial person in ESD, and so we are kind of relearning what that report needs to consist of. And the report I shared you has some errors in it. I'm sorry. So I'm just going to give you an overall view of what we have, if that's okay with everybody.
That's totally okay and understandable. Yeah. Don't worry.
Yeah, and I will send you this document just so you all have it as a reference to follow up. So basically, we have close to $150,000 to spend in grants funds this year. So I'm going to tell you what that's made up of. So first of all, as you'll recall, we didn't spend all of the funds that were allocated for us in 2021. So of the $60,000 that was allocated to us by the city as a one-time Recover Forward instigation, we only spent about 33,000 of that, which means we have $26,775 left over to allocate for grants this year from that Recover Forward fund from 2021. In addition to that, we did not spend our BUEA zone funds from last year. That was an additional $40,000. And earlier today, the BUEA approved us using that fund from 2021 for grants in 2022. That $40,000 is in addition to the other $40,000 they have allocated for us to spend in 2022. So that means from the BUEA, we have a total of $80,000 to allocate this year. And in addition to that, we have the usual 2022 annual $40,000 that the city gives us to allocate. So again, that's just over $140,000 of grants money. Elliot, are you so ready to come up with the strategy to get all that money out the door in 2022? I am. And so what I will share with the BUEA is during their conversation about the best ways to spend this money, they suggested that we consider granting out some of their $80,000 in ways that go beyond the usual like operational grants or arts projects grants. So they said if we could find other opportunities to allocate larger chunks of money to other projects, they are open to supporting those as well. So as the grants committee starts to talk about what they might want to do for this new year and cycles for this year, that's something that we can consider. That's what I've got financial report wise. Any questions?
Any questions? All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much. And yes, we will be brainstorming about what we can do with the grants program for this year.
Great.
I had a meeting with Arts Forward Bloomington earlier today, and there's some ideas, some feedback that they want to share with us, and I'll do that at the grants meeting. There's no point.
Awesome.
It's very raw at this point.
Sure. Thanks.
Nick, shall we go ahead with public art update, please?
Yeah, sure thing. I actually did want to ask a quick question before I dive into this, because it hasn't come up in our public art meetings, and it maybe ties in with the conversation about an art center feasibility study, all that. Holly, have you heard anything recently about when or if the convention center expansion conversation might pick up? Do you have any context for that?
I don't know. This is something that's I have had on my agenda to learn more about, and I don't. My understanding is I don't think there's movement, but if you want to take a minute now to provide context, I'm happy, or we can do that offline.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just for everyone's benefit. I mean, I think the short version is that there were significant conversations in like 2019 and into early 2020 about plans for expanding the convention center. It's complicated because it's the Monroe County Convention Center, and so there's some county city dynamics that were still being hotly debated in March before everything got shut down. But there's an innkeeper's tax, and so like hotel revenue, but then also dining and drink revenue. I can't remember if it's bound within the BUEA or just some other downtown boundaries. We're going to drive the income for this. Obviously, those sectors were hit hard with the pandemic, and so the whole conversation's been on pause. There was like an HT article in maybe September, October, that sort of hinted that members of the Convention Center Commission were sort of hinting at picking the conversation up soon. And so I'm just not sure when that is. But I think where this applies to us is in the early days where there had been lots of stakeholder meetings. We had made an effort Sean and other people within ESD had made an effort to really keep their ear to the ground. The thought was, how do we get in early, like we've tried to with some of these other big, city projects that could be applied as 1% projects, and how do we get in early enough that there could potentially be integrated art elements, kind of similar to what we did with the 4th Street garage versus just hanging something outside or putting something in a corner, right? Like, so there's probably nothing actionable now. Like I'm going to catch up with Mike McAfee from Visit Bloomington soon, and I'll see what he's heard on it. But I have a sense that it's probably going to pick back up in the next few months. And so we just might want to keep our ears open for it.
That's super helpful. Thank you. I will find out what I can on this end.
Cool. Okay. Sorry to go on a little tangent there. But other 1% projects, 4th Street garage completed. Very exciting. As Holly referenced earlier, the Waldron rededication date being moved most likely to first Friday in March. I believe we're talking about looking at that possibly as well, as a dedication ribbon cutting for 4th Street. Beyond that, I think the one new 1% project to put on the grid is Holly, you brought up the tech center in the trades district. For the couple people who aren't on the public art committee, do you want to give a little bit of context for that?
Yeah, so we recently got a very large grant to fund a tech center in the trades district. And much like our other, like the hospital, we will have a 1% stake in that. So I'm still, because the hospital is really, I think, where I'll be asked to be spending more of my attention, 1% project-wise, in the coming months of the new year. But I definitely want to keep us in the conversation about the tech center as well. So I'll start providing you all on updates about that. Another thing I shared at the public arts meeting last week is just one thing I'm going to be doing in the coming weeks is just a little research into our 1% for the arts ordinance and looking at budgets for past 1% for the arts projects to learn what we're really pulling that 1% from and what legally the ordinance says we are allowed to pull from, just so we can put that to the city to make sure for projects like the hospital and the tech center that we're getting that full 1% that we deserve. And as kind of, I'm very deadline oriented, and a way to put a fire on my own butt is I will be making a presentation on that to the public arts subcommittee group next month. And so then we'll report back to the larger group about that as well. So.
That's great. Yeah, awesome. And then, so I think with both the tech center and hospital redevelopment site, both those are still just very early stages. It's in Holly's court until there's something more actionable for us. And then Trades Gateway. I think Holly, did you have your meeting with Larry?
No, it's later in the week.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So still figuring out the legal on dissolving the Ignition Arts contract and figuring out exactly the best way we'll go about picking up a new fabricator. But the sort of exciting thing is, with non 1% projects, with the Rogers Family Farm Park, the bike garage, like the People's Park adjacent mural, and the Hidden Rivers downtown project. The first two of those, the Rogers Park and People's Park, those are our top priorities. And so Holly is going to be working on RFQs for those to get out this first quarter. We also had a discussion in our public art meeting talking through the RFQ and review process. And I think a few good notes that we have, we're talking about using the same software that we're using for grants potentially, or a Google form to streamline the process and really standardize the way in which information is delivered to us. specifically, where traditionally we received like a letter of interest, which sort of allowed artists, on one hand, sort of a free-form way to express themselves. I think what we found through reviews is we were sometimes lacking answers to things that we wanted. And so instead, we'll build into this form, some questions that more clearly articulate what we want feedback on, so that we can get more consistent answers and have more objective information to compare applicants on. And then also in submissions of previous work, I think we're also going to ask for a certain number of examples, maybe it's like 5, and then posing specific questions to get context around those projects. What role did they specifically play in it? What was the budget for the project? Was it completed within that budget? Did they collaborate with stakeholders, whether public or private, in the concept and design? And was there a community engagement element? So I think we got a lot of really good feedback from the committee on sort of what was lacking, or what we sort of struggled to compare applicants on in previous reviews. And so this feels like a really nice evolution of the process. So thank you, Bryony, for prompting that conversation, and then everyone else for the good feedback. Beyond that, near West Side mural, Holly is still working to figure out when that project can happen. She's talking to Public Works about plans to repave, and also talking with Laura, the artist, and the neighborhood group about community engagement specifics. And so, that will likely happen later in the year. And then I think we mentioned this briefly before, but there's a conversation starting with the Buzzkirk about their centennial anniversary. There is an element where they may seek to commission some art that might be placed around town, and used to either tied to events or to engage the community, throughout their centennial year. And we may assist the call with that. Holly and I got our emails. I know Holly's going to be at a BCT board meeting soon as well, but also we're on a thread with a secretly colleague of mine who's on the board, and we're going to try to figure out a good time for them to come in and present in one of these meetings, so we can get the full commission's perspective on it. And then what else? So greenways. Holly, I don't know if you've had any follow-up conversations from our meeting, but do you want to give the quick summary on this?
Sure. So our colleagues in bicycle transportation. So I think you all are probably familiar with greenways throughout the city. So there are larger ones like the 7th Street, like barricaded bike lane, but then in neighborhoods on smaller streets, there are streets that are like designated to be more pedestrian and bike friendly. And currently the way those are marked are just like with a green stencil with an outline of a bike in it. And so the city is looking for some better visual cues to mark those pathways. So some of my colleagues at the city approached me with some preliminary thoughts on what those designs could look like, and the Public Art Committee and I looked at those. And again, these are just designed by staff members. They took a great stab at it, and after reviewing their proposal with the Public Art Committee, we agreed that we've got some feedback that we're going to share about how to just make the designs more consistent, potentially safer, so lines don't necessarily have bikes going into the wrong lane of traffic, and potentially consider doing a call to invite an artist to do a more formal like tag or brand that can be put on the road to visually cue these greenway paths. I'm meeting with my colleague tomorrow to discuss options. And once I have that initial conversations, there will be some conversation. I'm not sure if they have funds allocated for this. So that's going to be a big part of whether or not we can actually bring in an artist to help with this work, but I'll have more to share soon after I meet with her tomorrow. And my understanding, Nick, is this person, Mallory, is also just keen to collaborate with the BAC. So I think it'll just be the beginning of a good conversation with colleagues in the city to think about how we can use really interesting artistic visual cues throughout the city. So, yeah.
That's great. Cool. I looking at my notes from the public art meeting, I think that covers everything, but Holly, Bryony, anybody else, did I miss anything that we should talk about, or anyone have questions about anything that we covered?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's talk about grants. And I know that there isn't a whole lot, but Elliot, do you want to walk us through what's coming up?
Hi, everyone. I'm here. I just had a loud cat attack, so I decided to pause my system for a minute while I went and handled that. Yeah, so I am the new grants subcommittee chair. Really excited to have been voted by the faith of my peers into that appointment. And I'll be meeting with Holly and with Bryony quite soon, I think in a few days, to discuss where we think we're going to go with this, how we're going to build the program, sustain it, how we're going to spend all the money that we held over from the long COVID year. And I'm really excited about that. And I am, of course, open to feedback and one-on-ones and conversations with everyone on the commission, as well as any members of the public. So I think that's all I can report for now, since I'm brand new. But I'm really looking forward to it.
My only question for the commission is any thoughts or probing questions that you want us to take to our brainstorm meeting in a couple days? Anything to consider? All right, well, if you think of something, just shoot us an email. We're meeting on Saturday. All right, thank you, Elliot. Let's see, what's next on the agenda? Okay, did you all get a chance to review a document that I sent out yesterday, or is anybody completely unfamiliar with it? Rachel?
It was not in the documents that Holly shared. It was from you.
Yes.
Unfamiliar.
No worries. It's totally fine. That just tells me how much I dive into the details. Don't worry at all. So I've been having kind of offline conversations with various people around the city and within City Hall, with the idea of creating something in Bloomington that is akin to events that happen in Austin and in just pretty much everywhere, which is a cultural festival. So the premise here is kind of letting everybody turn their gardens, their homes, their stoops, their whatever into a performance venue, a gallery, whatever it is that they want. So dividing the city into 4 quadrants from, it was Jordan and, anyway, I can look up what we figured the good quadrants were. And allotting a Saturday to each quadrant, be it 4 consecutive Saturdays or 1 per month, and you have 4 months. Is it 2 in the spring, 2 in the fall, all through the summer? All of that is still very much up for debate. But I wanted to bring this to the commission just as a starting point to get your initial thoughts and perspective of what this could potentially be. This is not something that we are, funding and running all on our own. There's a lot of people involved, but it does need to come from kind of citizen-led versus from within City Hall. So I've taken that upon myself. I'm happy to do that through the BAC or independently. I don't mind either way. This is something that you can all choose to get involved or not with, or just kind of be advisors. But it is allowing people as I said, to turn their front yards into galleries, be able to do transaction sales and not have any like tax issues, zoning, that kind of thing. It allows the Girl Scouts to make a performance. It allows bands, teenage bands to get together and start performing, and in a way kind of highlight the community that lives in each quadrant. Each quadrant would also have a designated hub, say, for example, FAR, because FAR is present today, and we always like to use FAR as a good example, where you would have some food trucks where information can be found about who's participating, maps of the quadrant, any details, like it becomes that central point from where people can start to spread out and explore what that neighborhood has to offer for the cultural festival that week. So all of that is kind of outlined in that first very big picture draft proposal that I sent out, and I'll send it to you, Rachel, so that you can look at it at your own pace. But so I just wanted to get a sense from the commission to see if you think this is something that could benefit Bloomington, if it's something that you think has no legs and shouldn't be attempted, as we continue to work with Visit Bloomington, with members of City Hall, with all of these different neighborhood groups, to have representation and participation from all of them, to bring it to fruition. So.
Bryony, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's a miracle. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't control them. What I wanted to say is I think it's a phenomenal concept and a phenomenal idea. The problem that I have with it is how it's administrative and how you can possibly do something this big and under what kind of structure. And therefore, one of the things that I was thinking about is, I remember when I first joined the BAC, and I had an entirely different concept of what it was. I thought that the BAC was more like what Sean defined to me as an arts council. In other words, I thought it was an organization that encompassed all the various groups, put them together, set up maybe calendars for the city, and promoted events like you're talking about. Okay. I had long discussions with, or not so long, maybe with Sean about it, and with quite a few other people, and was educated about how essentially what I thought the Arts Commission was really the role of an arts council, which in fact we do not have in Bloomington. Instead, we have multiple organizations doing pieces of what might be an arts council. And sometimes they overlap, sometimes there are big holes in what doesn't get done, such as Arts Alliance, BEAD, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things about this is that you have something like the Waldron, which is floundering or having a problem because it seems like whenever no one knows where to put something, it gets put in Holly or her position and her lap, and that she's got to figure it out. The other thing that I've learned is that one of the huge things with the Arts Commission, aside from what it's assigned to do, is the fact that this is a total volunteer organization, that there is no one for some of the projects or things that we're talking about or could be very time consuming, and that in fact you need to have someone who's paid to do that. And we've been very lucky in that, you know, with some of the interns or with Helen, with whatever, but it's been having good luck with good people and good volunteers and Bryony's leadership. So, which leads me to say that I think there's a big hole in Bloomington that's not being filled, and that that maybe it's a discussion that could be had in order to come up with some kind of proposal for an organizational proposal that coordinates all these arts, and therefore under that umbrella would be what you're proposing. Because I think it's phenomenal, but unless it's somebody is paid to organize this, Jesus, I mean, it would, you know, you're talking about a gargantuan undertaking. So, I hope I was clear about this, but I know that something just as simple as a really good arts directory, Arts Alliance has pieces of one. You know, other people, you know, there's just so many things that are pieced out here. And there's so much here that's really rich and happening or trying to happen. So maybe maybe this would, what's wrong? That maybe is separate from this, that we need to have a discussion about how this could be set up, how it could happen, how we can coordinate everything. And I think, you know, Holly has a great perspective, because all of a sudden she's been dumped into all of this. And yet she's coming from a place that had councils, commissions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that the thing being a public meeting right now, I cannot name those who are involved in the conversations.
Exactly.
But part of that is actually been taken into consideration as to who would actually be the one foot on the ground, and how it would all come to be. But while a lot of it is unknown, the conversation is happening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Any additional comments, questions? Rachel?
I was just going to jump in and also say, Bernie, I did get the email, it just got buried. On a somewhat different scale in Kansas City, we lived there when they did their Open Spaces Arts and Culture Festival, it was massive. But I think this same sort of spirit and the idea where just all sorts of spaces throughout the city became venues for art installations and concerts and performances. And I think that Bloomington is perfectly suited for something like that. And especially as someone who I'm trying to make plans professionally and personally, you know, for summer and spring and looking out, and as COVID seems to just sort of like swoop in and ruin everything, this sort of like micro venue on your own front porch where people are outside, like I think this is a lovely way to think creatively about how we can circumvent some of those unknowns. So I share Babette's concerns about, you know, like who executes this fantastic idea, but I think it is a fantastic idea, so I'm excited to see how the plans evolve.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. I'm curious about the quadrants and, you know, how they would be parceled out and what that would, you know, would they be like organic community units, or is it really just like more of a practical consideration, but I haven't looked at the document in depth yet. Yeah.
That's okay. It's basically dividing the city at Kirkwood and Jordan, and then from there starting to see where can we locate a hub and how far out do we want to go, because we don't want to be so spread out either that people are having to drive from one section to another kind of thing, but also finding, based on each quadrant, is it closer to downtown or a little bit further away for this one in particular? Where can we cluster the most cultural level details? And then the one thing that I didn't mention, but that is a highlight for me personally, is the opportunity for those emerging artists, for those who are kind of dabbling or insecure or can't, are like, I'm never going to get a gallery show. All of those people, that's our opportunity to highlight that emerging talent, be it because they're 15 or because they're 55 and scared. It doesn't matter. It's just giving them an opportunity to come out and be celebrated.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think there's a lot of energy here, and I think it's a great way to consolidate it and also have that saturation into communities. Yeah.
Anything else?
Is it possible to, the open studios is pretty spread out, and actually people have to access them by car, and that works. So, I think it's doable to have things spread out. It's a matter of, we might have to have a map. Yeah, I think they do that, but we might look to them and, see how that works.
Yep.
Yeah, the other thought that I have is, and it was interesting that you volunteered, potentially using FAR as an anchor, because I was curious whether the concept was to anchor to places like that already draw audiences, and host events, or if there was going to be an effort to intentionally skew away from that, and I think similarly, I'd wonder about existing events, right? Like, are there existing events that might happen in some of these neighborhoods that is it better to try to build on those and attach to those, or is it better to counter program and be at a different point in the calendar, for example? That's maybe something to sort of meditate on. But I think the other thing maybe to think about is sort of going to Babette's concern about capacity. I don't think we're as the Arts Commission, we're going to conjure up, nor is it our mission to conjure up like a functioning arts council, right? But like, I think looking at your document, Bryony, you pointed to a few different departments, a few different, sources of, labor and support and organizing power. I think the other thing that we could look at is maybe everyone could just sort of scan the list of city commissions, because I think one good like micro example is the Blackie Brown Festival, right? Which, is a collaboration. A lot of that leadership comes from, Bloomington's Commission on Hispanic and Latino Affairs, right? And Safe and Civil City Programming, right? And so the Arts Commission has always been attached to that. Sean, in his staff role, was heavily involved. I imagine, Holly would be in future iterations of it, but it was never something that we really drove. We supported it. We had a role, but we were not the primary driver of it. And so I think, particularly if there are city commissions that, whether due to, the work they do and it being more applicable to a certain neighborhood or a certain quadrant of the city, or if there's like a thematic element that tied in. I think like just like a couple like immediate examples. It's like, all right, Historic Preservation Commission, right? Like, if like whatever quadrant, Rosehill Cemetery is in, or maybe there are other sort of like landmarks like that. Maybe there's a historical preservation element that they might be interested in being a co-sponsor for one of the quadrants, or, we're talking about like the Bike and Pedestrian Safety Commission earlier, like if we do a project with them, to do some sort of, art enhancement of greenways, maybe we look at where those greenways are located. And part of it is working with that commission to activate a greenway as part of like a particular quadrants festival. And so there may be opportunities for us to find, other commission or like city department partners for each quadrant to sort of spread this out, but also to give each quadrant its own sort of personality and flavor, and sort of avoid that groupthink of the same people planning each thing that might just make it feel like a repeating quarterly festival that just happens in different places. So that might help with just diverse programming, but also sort of, lessening the burden that maybe we're worried about being on the commission or on Holly, and also I think just working towards that goal that I think we've had over the last few years of how do we collaborate with other parts of city government commissions.
I love that.
That's my soapbox.
No, I love that idea.
I think also neighborhood associations. I know Hyde Park tends to have, they have a little parade on 4th of July. So we could link up to that. I live in Spicewood. We tend to have a Labor Day get-together picnic. And so I think a lot of the neighborhood associations already have an event going on, and where people are gathering. And if we find out when that is, it might help us with scheduling.
I just wanted to say one of the other things that I had always thought that maybe the commission could do, and Nick's points made me think of it in a different way, was the idea of a big paint Bloomington and doing it with the different commissions, or even with neighborhood associations, with anything. I mean, it could be expanded or contracted in so many different ways. I had always thought a simple way would be just to do it in Bryant Park, and just to, I had been involved in quite a few of these up in some of the smaller towns in northern Westchester in New York. And they were really very easy. They weren't overly complicated to do. They just required a lot of publicity, and people loved them, came out, all ages. It's very easy to get people involved. So you could almost do, if you wanted to do a quarter, you could do this, this time is a paint Bloomington, then a dance Bloomington. It could be whatever. There are different ways of expanding it. We were able to do it in a fairly non-complicated manner, meaning it didn't take huge amounts of labor. And we had all the different arts organizations, and there are millions in town, love the concept of it. And in doing something like that, in terms of bringing in neighborhood organizations or any of the other groups that you were mentioning, Nick, I think would be phenomenal. It's a great way of expanding it. But along with the KISS theory, keep it simple.
Perfect. I'll keep dabbling at this on my end. I appreciate the feedback. Holly, is there anything you want to add at this point?
I think it's a great idea. I think it speaks to the initiative of giving neighborhoods more resources and empowering them to really explore their own artistic talents. And I think too, I know one conversation we're going to be having with the grant subcommittee is about finding those emerging artists. So I think this festival would also be a great opportunity to identify who those people are and get to know them a little better and make sure they understand the other resources that the BAC makes available to them. So I think it's a great idea overall. I mean, of course, it's going to be, it's work, we know that, but I think there are other organizations within the city that I think would be willing to contribute to the work. I think Downtown Bloomington Incorporation comes to mind. I've listed that as a note in the document. And I think as far as city goes, I agree. I think working with other commissions and neighborhood associations is great. The city's Housing and Neighborhood Development Department actually puts out like annual grants for neighborhoods to do different projects that include public art. So I think they're the ones who will have the connections with neighborhoods, know what they're interested in, I think. And I would say too, they might be a good source to provide some funds for something like this. But again, I just think overall, as we think about where we want Bloomington to be as a city that really supports and empowers people to make art, I think this festival is really speaking to that and can kind of drive, our conversations as we go forward to make a larger strategic plan for what that could look like. So thank you for taking the time to put this together.
Yeah, perfect. All right. And looking at the agenda, let me see, pull it up real quick. Secretary needed. Let's skip that for now, since we're going to have several new commissioners, hopefully in the next meeting or two, and we'll see if somebody else wants to take on that secretary position. If not, we will just maybe have to draw the short stick or something. One quick little update is I've been going into the Google Calendar, the BAC Google Calendar. Holly, do you have that? That was something that we started with Sean, and I wanted to make sure that you have access to it.
Oh, wait, so it's a, do I have it? Give me just, I'll check.
But basically I've started adding some kind of blackout dates that I am not available. I am starting conferences this year. So there will be certain periods where I'm out of town or have very limited availability. And I'm just adding those there so that you all can reference it. If you're trying to reach me and I'm not responding, you can look at the calendar and be like, oh yeah, no, it makes sense. So yeah, that's my only little other chair update. But we can look at it later, Holly, if you have it or not.
I do have it. Thank you. Yeah.
Perfect. Commissioner announcements. All right. Well, we're way ahead of schedule today.
Do we need to approve the meeting minutes?
True.
I think I had a hand in making sure that you jumped over those, probably. I think we would,
yeah, well, because you jumped.
Yeah, because I jumped. I jumped myself. Yeah.
All right. So before we do commissioner announcements, did you all have a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting in December? Any comments, concerns, adjustments to the minutes? All right, and move to approve the minutes from our December meeting. Any seconds?
Second.
All right, Nick?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Babette?
Yes.
Liz? Liz? I mean, technically we have
Hi,
majority.
yes. Sorry.
No worries.
Hey,
Do you
guys.
approve the minutes for December?
Yes. Sorry. I've been it's not been recognizing me. Sorry about that. Yes.
All right. Perfect. All right. With that, we can move on to commissioner announcements then. Anybody have anything to share?
There's going to be, and wow, I can't remember the opening date because that's just how things are. The Eskenazi Museum is opening a really exciting show centered around our Stuart Davis swing landscape painting, which is a large and lovely painting that was intended to be a public mural for a housing complex in Brooklyn. And it looks at the exhibition is curated by my colleague Jenny McComas, and looks at that piece and its relationship to the other commissions, and just kind of mural art and public projects at the time. Really exciting stuff. I hope you all can go see it. And as always, I extend my invitation to tour you through the museum if you'd like and when you'd like.
Elliot, when is that going to open? Do you know?
I actually don't, Babette. I'm really sorry. I really soon. It also has a really amazing catalog published by Yale University Press that actually came out. The show has been long delayed because of COVID and because of the how far some of the loans are coming from. But I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but it's very soon.
Okay.
It looks like February 5th.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Holly added a link to the chat for that. Any other commissioner announcements? Nick?
Yeah, it's a quick one. The Bloomington Music Expo, as far as I know, is still on for February 5th. That's the last thing I heard from Mike at Visit Bloomington. It'll be a little more spread out, and I believe proof of vaccination or negative test will be necessary to enter the convention center. Masks will be required, all that. But it's back. So if you want to shop for records from 40 some vendors and see some live music, that is happening on Saturday the 5th.
Anybody else? All right. Well, it's time for public comment. Chaz?
Hey everybody. Very exciting things happening. Happy New Year. I had to rush off the last meeting. Thank you for our grant for the FAR Photo Review. I'm really excited. We're going to announce it next week. We already have at least 15 people from the FAR Photo Review. That's going to be like 100% in the show. And it'll be early March. So I hope everybody mark your calendars now. It'll be March 4th during Gallery Walk. And the show will be up for a week. So if you can't come that day, it'll be up through the 11th of March. So I'm really excited. And literally everybody in the FAR Photo Review is super excited for this chance. So to remind people who maybe forgot what it is, I do a monthly critique and discussion with photographers in the community of every level. They show their work, we all talk about it. It's really constructive criticism and just a good way to like know other photographers, be inspired, learn how to talk about your work, build community. So we're gonna actually do a show in March. So I'm really excited. It's because of the grant for the BUA, so I'm very excited. We will definitely be promoting you guys and thanking you. And anyway, it means a lot to the people who are participating. For many of them, it'll be maybe the only show they'll ever be involved in. Hopefully we'll have more though. Or it's the first one, and they really get to learn how to be in a show and how to print their work and how to frame. And so we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. I just wanted to say that it really matters what you guys do in your commission. It does really matter to a lot of people, especially the grants and your job, Holly. It's very important to the rest of the community. So thank you all. Yeah, if I could just tell you how grateful all of the people who are in the show are, like they love it. They're so excited. So I just want to tell you all that. And this month is pretty weird. So FAR is just like, what do we do right now? We're going to have workshops. We're going to have events. But yeah, who knows? We're just kind of pushing everything back until at least February. So we'll have workshops. So FAR, you're welcome to collaborate with us or do anything. So hit me up for whatever. I love that idea about the festival and all these things happening. So anyway, thanks everybody. Happy New Year. I'm going away now.
Thank you for being our supporter.
Yeah, thanks for being such a great ally. The members of your photo exhibit should apply for emerging artist grants when we do our next cycle. I'll make sure to share that information with you.
Yes, I've told some of them about it that I think would really be good candidates. So they hopefully will. Remind me though, because I really do want them to.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, does anybody have anything else they want to share? Question in regards to the commission? If not, I'll let you off. Yeah,
but Holly, if people like those young people want to be on a mailing list for grants, how would they go about that?
They are welcome to send me an email. I'll just share briefly. One of the things I'm trying to do for the first quarter of the year here at the city is just kind of put together a more coherent communication strategy. So anytime a specific grant opportunity comes across my desk, for example, from the Indiana Arts Commission or from another listserv I'm on, I can forward that on to people who I feel will be appropriate for based on conversations I've heard or had. And I'm also based on conversations I've had and people I've reached out to and pulling also from lists that Sean had. I'm trying to create one list I can blast grant information to anytime the BAC does a cycle. So all to say, Babette, if you have specific people who would be interested in getting those notifications on a more streamlined case, please send their names my way and I will add them to the list.
Okay, I don't specifically, however, I think that one of the reasons we have such poor representation with some of the grants is because there isn't.
No, I absolutely agree. And again, this is something I'm really working to change in the coming months. I'm planning to meet with, you have to understand that for me, it's like, there is no communications department here. And the Office of the Mayor has a very small communications department and they do great work, but they are doing it for every department in the city. And so it's really on me, but I am hoping to be able to meet with the communications people in the Office of the Mayor during the first quarter of this year to talk to them, not just about how do we get the word out on a better, more consistent basis. How are we louder? How are we deepening the pool of people that we're getting the word out to? But also things like how are we then publicizing our accomplishments? For example, the 4th Street Garage is amazing. That information and the fact that Bloomington supports things like that needs to be out in the world. So I'll be partnering with the communications department for the city to think more holistically.
If I can help you with anything, even if it's just trying to do data entry on a spreadsheet or whatever, I think it's really, really important and we're terribly lacking.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate your willingness to contribute. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, well, you all get 24 minutes to your day back. Go enjoy them. And I will see you all at either committee meetings or at the next monthly meeting.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Good night.
Thanks. Bye.